Having a place to call home is one of those things that's instinctual. Whether it's a wide open terrain that you explore as a nomadic hunter, or a 3-story Victorian townhouse in the middle of a bustling metropolis, home is where you're meant to feel safe, secure, and calm. The process of finding a home is exciting for most people. Taking a tour of a new house to find out if you like the neighborhood or the rooms are suitable for what you need. One thing you've likely never considered, though, is what if this house is a metaphysical gateway, a portal to allow demons to come in and terrorize you and your family. Let's take a look at a story that's a little more recent, but it contains a lot of the classic tropes and principles from other famous and notable hauntings. I'm going to let this episode kind of be an introduction to some of the principles and key players in the paranormal sphere for the uninitiated. Figures like Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Catholic Church, and how law enforcement and the medical community all intermingle into the investigation into a possession or demonology. If you're into this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel and make sure to ring the bell for notifications because I put out weekly videos like this. In the United States, there's a city that strikes terror into the very soul of anyone who's ever dared venture. Evil stems from its very name. The sewers run with the bile of depravity, and the populace are near mindless zombie-like shadows of humanity, forgotten remnants of a once productive people. But that's enough about Cleveland. Our story takes place in Gary, Indiana, home of the Gary Railcats, the Jackson family, and actor Avery Brooks, who played Captain Benjamin Sisko on Star Trek DS9. Fun fact, the only Starfleet captain to ever punch Q square in the face. 3860 Carolina Street was purchased in 2010 as an investment to use as a rentable property. In December 2011, Latoya Ammons and her family signed the lease to move into the property. Days after moving in, however, the first signs of paranormal happenings started to appear. Thick clouds of black houseflies appeared on the porch, and it seemed no matter what Latoya did, they would always return. Latoya was mentioned as saying, "You can kill them and kill them and kill them, but they keep coming back." Now, cluster flies are not necessarily uncommon, but thick clouds of black houseflies tend to be associated with hauntings and paranormal possessions, especially when it's in an area that's not necessarily common, like in the middle of December at the Ammons household. Rosa Campbell, Latoya's mother, wasn't a woman who gave easily to flights of fancy or whimsy. She was a woman of the earth, dedicated to helping her daughter raise her 3 children. So it was notable when Rosa mentioned to the family that she heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the basement. There was no outside access to the basement and nothing had been moved, but Rosa still found it worth mentioning. It wasn't until they started seeing shadows cross the room and the clear, defined outline of a man's boot, wet on the steps, that their nerves started to become a little frazzled. In March in 2012, the family was dealing with an unexpected and tragic loss of a close family friend. Latoya and Rosa's extended family were at the property, including relatives of the young children, who were asleep. Around 2 a.m., the family members started hearing screaming coming from the room the children were sleeping in. Upon getting to the doorway, they saw Latoya's 12-year-old daughter levitating and unconscious. They stood in shock, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Unsure of what to do, they began praying. When Rosa stepped forward to grab the young girl, as soon as she touched her, the girl fell to the bed, woke up sleepy-eyed and unaware of anything that had happened. Events continued to escalate and be generally terrifying for everybody involved. Some of the examples include Latoya's young 9-year-old son sitting in a closet talking to an imaginary friend, then describing graphically what it's like to die, Latoya's 9-year-old son being flung across the room out of nowhere into the wall, the children would periodically speak in deep booming voices, objects would be found moved or stacked in places they shouldn't be, and after being ignored by church officials, when Latoya reached out to a clairvoyant, They told her that it was besieged by over 200 separate demonic entities. Yeah, if your spidey sense is starting to tingle, recognizing themes and tropes from other movies and comics and books and television shows, there's a very good reason for that. Ed and Lorraine Warren. If there is a famous haunting that has become a franchise pop culture icon, there's a good chance that these two are involved. The spiritualist and demonologist duo have been called in to estimate dozens of hauntings, from the DeVeo house of Amityville Horror to the haunted doll behind Annabelle, and most famously, the story that led to the Poltergeist franchise. Now, it's unfair to assume that the Warrens invented any of these tropes, though it has been speculated that they at least embellished some of the claims. However, it's equally unfair to assume that Latoya Ammons, a single mother in Illinois, would have any idea of who the Warrens were. That name is not exactly common knowledge, unless you're into the ooky spooky. The situation became so dire that the neighbors began reporting the situation to the police. Constant screaming and crashing from inside the house led authorities to investigate several times. After several welfare checks, the family was taken to the hospital for psychological and physical screenings. And while Latoya and two of her children were totally fine with this, Latoya's eldest son had a bit of an episode. Latoya's eldest son was enraged by this. He spit, bit, and snarled at nurses, howled in a voice that was deeper than ever should have been possible for a boy his age. When a deputy stepped in to help, something so unbelievable and unreal took place that no one could offer a legitimate explanation. The boy smiled with a grimace, walked backwards up the wall, near sliding, flipped over a nurse, and tried to run out of the room. He was restrained and able to be sedated, and when he came to, he had no memory of this event. Anywho, it was at this point, with the confirmation of the deputy, the nursing staff who witnessed the event, that the church finally deemed it appropriate to become involved. The chaplain from the hospital, who had seen the reports and witnessed some of the more mild paranormal happenings, reached out to Father Michael Magano, suggesting an exorcism may be in order. Father Michael agreed to look into the situation and meet with the family. An exorcism is a ritualistic practice to expel or destroy a demon from a person, place, or object. While synonymous with Catholicism, it isn't necessarily tied to any one religion. While each religious practice may be different in ceremony, they look to achieve the same result. There's a misconception when it comes to the Catholic Church's role in exorcisms. Despite how it's portrayed, they tend not to perform an exorcism just because it was requested, or because they have some holy water that's about to expire. There's a process that the diocese will escalate through to determine if an exorcism is genuinely warranted. It can involve investigations and documentation from authorities outside of the church, including psychiatrists, welfare services, and community leaders. Many requests end up being resolved not by casting out of a demon in an elaborate ceremony that is performed in the Vatican tombs, but by counseling and SSRIs or other medications. However, in the event an exorcism is warranted, the church has established a guidebook on how they should proceed. Exorcisms have a dubious history when it comes to causing injury or even death, and that's kinda not the result you're going for. During Father Michael Magano's first visit, the phenomenon was mild. Some of the blinds moved despite no air current. The bathroom light flickered on and off, but Father Magano did see the footprints appear near the stairs to the basement. This 4-hour interview, however, did convince Father Magano that an exorcism was warranted. He went about the house reading scripture and sprinkling holy water, advising the family to temporarily leave for their safety. Heeding his advice, Latoya and Rosa moved in with a nearby relative. At this point, the children were in the care of the Illinois Department of Children's Services. A couple of weeks after Father Magano's visit, a DCS case manager came by the house with Latoya and Rosa to check on the suitability of the living situation. The case manager had also requested a law enforcement officer to accompany her. Pretty standard procedure. However, due to all the reports and documentation, 2 other officers reached out of professional curiosity to also attend to do a private investigation into the demonic claims. When they arrived, Ammons declined to go into the property. Rosa, however, gave a tour to authorities. explaining that the spiritualist they had initially contacted told them that the dirt under the stairs was the source of the emanating demonic energy. The two officers who were there, investigating the possession claims, decided to enter the basement, bringing flashlights and audio recording devices. The basement played havoc on their electronics nearly immediately. Despite having brand new batteries as they entered, one of the audio recording devices shut down. The flashlights flickered, and the other audio recording device's file was garbled and almost indecipherable. However, upon examining, the officer was able to make out a wholly separate and distinct voice that popped up on the tape. Father Mangano, meanwhile, referred the case to the Archdiocese on the matter of the exorcism. It was deemed appropriate, and the first of 3 exorcisms on the house and Latoya's 9-year-old son took place. Between the second and third exorcisms, Ammons' headache and bad dreams stopped. The children were soon reunited with their mother after a parenting plan was established to ensure proper school attendance. And not long after that, Latoya Ammons and Rosa, along with the children, found other living conditions. In 2016, the house was purchased and torn down. The soil was examined by workers out of curiosity. The house had become somewhat notorious. A stone altar with indecipherable hieroglyphics depicting decapitations, burning women praying on their knees, and cannibalistic horned men was discovered. Almost had you for a second. No, they didn't find shit. Most documented stories of hauntings tend to end like this, somewhat unresolved, a bit anticlimactic. We don't know if this was some elaborate hoax, and for what means. It wasn't exactly a super notorious story. We don't know if this was the combination of the family's energy and the house's energy creating something or opening something. The landlord said he had no trouble with the property before the Ammons family, so I guess we'll never know. All you can do is hope that you never find your child backwards crab walking up a wall onto the ceiling while speaking in an ancient dead language, because despite the amount of parenting advice there is on YouTube, I don't know if anybody has covered that. But I'd be curious to know what your take is on the whole situation down in the comments. Please remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell for weekly notifications. And if you have a story or topic that you think is interesting, feel free to leave it down in the comments or shoot me a message. And until next time, a toodaloo!